What's up? It's Elijah Campbell from 107.5 The Game here, just leaving Legacy Arena, about to head back to beautiful Columbia, South Carolina, after South Carolina Gamecocks clinched their 5th straight Final Four. That's now the second longest Final Four streak in women's college basketball history. And man, it wasn't pretty. And man, it was anxiety-inducing for a lot of that game, but ultimately the Gamecocks did what they needed to do and won 54-50. Thanks to all of our sponsors who have allowed me to come out here this week, including Atkins Law, Hilton Garden Inn, Columbia Craft and Peak Drift, and Lexington Discount Homes. All of them fantastic sponsors for us here at the game, and for me specifically this weekend to be here in Birmingham, Alabama to bring you coverage of the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. And of course, they will continue to help sponsor the run all the way to the Final Four in Tampa Bay next week. Let's talk about this game for a little bit. I think it's starting with maybe a little disappointment that fans might have how close this thing was and how the offense really struggled. It's the second straight game where you didn't get a ton offensively, and you'd like to see more offensively. But at the end of the day, this team scraps. And in March, when it matters most, it's like do or die basketball, this team does, and they do not die. And that's one reason why you earn most of the game. And even the game on Friday, I just had a feeling this team wouldn't lose, except for today. I really did think that they were in a little bit of trouble when they got into the fourth quarter and they were missing some free throws. They were, maybe struggling a little bit. Duke was finally starting to hit threes at halftime. Look, you had a small lead at the halftime break. I believe it was a 4-point lead at the half, and Duke was shooting 8 for 31, good for about 25%. They had 9 turnovers and 6 assists, weren't playing very good basketball, but they were still only down 4. And I thought that was a little bit of a sign that you might be on upset watch, just because when that happens and you don't necessarily take advantage of another team's shortcomings on offense and you let them hang around, there's a propensity in the month of March for weird stuff to happen. Sometimes if you don't create your own luck and you open up the door for weird things to happen, weird things are gonna happen. We see that in March all the time. We see that in this event, and ultimately it was good enough for Duke to be able to come back and take a lead in this game, right? I mean, Toby Fournier had a fantastic game. Jackson was able to finally hit some big shots, and I think they were the only two for Duke, as I look at the stat sheet right here, that actually ended in double figures. Yeah, Toby Fournier finished with 18 off the bench, Ashlyn Jackson with 13 in the starting lineup, but they were finally starting to hit some shots. They got a lot of momentum. They were creeping back into this game, took a lead, and ultimately defense came through late, and Chloe Kitts came through late. Chloe was the Birmingham Regional MVP. For the same reason she was the MVP of the SEC tournament, is because when this team needs somebody to step up, she steps up and scores late, and she has an ability to become this offense's easy button. I use that term to describe Josh Simon a lot during the football season, but it's really applicable for Chloe too. Looking at the stat sheet right now, Chloe drew 8 fouls. The Gamecocks as a team drew 18. 8 of those came from Chloe Kitts. Her ability to get to the line, to draw fouls, get easy buckets. She was 7 of 10 from the line too, including the 2 at the end that made it go from 52 to 50 to 54 to 50 with less than 7 seconds left. Ultimately was the dagger that won this game. She finished with 14 points and about 4 rebounds, but her performance was so big whenever they're struggling offensively against an elite defense team too. Let's not forget that. Yes, the offense struggled. Yes, it maybe doesn't look right now the way that Dawn and the coaching staff and the fan base wants, and I totally get that, but you knew you're going to have to maybe win a game in the 50s today just because of what Duke does. This Duke team's a top 5 efficient defense in all of college basketball. You knew they were going to bring their A game. You knew they were going to have them well scouted. And credit to Duke, because Duke was... They knew what South Carolina was going to do on offense before South Carolina ran it. Sitting there on the floor, it became very evident that anytime that Dawn or one of the assistants on the bench would give a play call, like a hand sign, Duke their defensive players, specifically Toby Fournier did it a couple times, Akanawa did it a couple of times, where they're yelling out where South Carolina is going to go on the floor. It was wild to watch, but Duke had this game really well scouted. It's just wild to see when one team calls a play, the other one's basically yelling out what's going to happen and communicating really well. And that's what Duke does. They're a great scouting team. Kerry Lawson is a fantastic coach, and I know Duke hasn't been to a Final Four since 2006, but they're going to go one day. Under Kerry Lawson, that team, that program will be in a Final Four sooner rather than later. I think that drought will end pretty soon. It's just not going to happen this year. But this Gamecock team engineered enough points to win the game. Was it enough points for it to look sexy and for it to be a win that this fan base is accustomed to in terms of blowing teams out at a big stage? No, but it was good enough to win, and that's what matters really in March, is survive and advance, and this team does a lot of surviving and advancing. That's what makes this group pretty special. Even when the offense isn't flowing very well throughout the game, it comes down to crunch time, and they did exactly what they needed to be able to win and score just enough, whether that be Tahina Pow driving baseline or getting into her pull-up game. I mean, she didn't it wasn't like, she lit the world on fire scoring, but she did score 9 points, and a lot of that came in the second half when the team really needed it. But defensively, too. I mean, I just got to talk about how good Duke's defense was. This defense is this team's calling card. Still is. And under Don Staley, it's always going to be. When Don Staley's coaching, you can guarantee every year it's going to be a top 5 defensive unit, if not number 1, every single year. And it was evident today, too. One of the biggest stats in this game that I think tells the story is Duke turning the ball over 19 times. And a lot of that was forced. And at a couple of key junctures in this game, South Carolina forced turnovers and was able to just allow Duke to have possessions and not get a shot off, right? There was one under 2 minutes left where Raven got a massive steal. And I thought that might have been the game right there. But she gets makes an incredible defensive play, gets a steal, leads to South Carolina getting fouled. They didn't really take advantage of that at the free throw line, but it was still a big possession to allow more time to run off the clock without Duke getting even a shot up. And then, of course, the last possession, right, where it's 52-50. Duke has the ball, under 30 seconds left, and they run their offense, and South Carolina does a lot of switching. They communicate it perfectly. And ultimately, down with not a lot of time left in the shot clock, Duke was forced to shoot a long three-pointer that wasn't even close to the rim. Bree Hall gets the rebound. They end up sealing it from there. That defensive possession, if there's any play you need to watch in this game and rewatch from this game, it's that defensive possession, because that's what this basketball team is. They're a lockdown defensive team. Even when they don't play well enough offensively to convince you they're going to go back to a Final Four, they lock in defensively, they make the plays they need to make, and they turn another team over 19 times, and when the game's on the line, they made Duke shoot a low percentage shot that fell short. Bree Hall got the defensive rebound. Game over. Were there flaws in this game? Yes. You don't ever want to see, an opponent grab 19 offensive rebounds, especially when you're only grabbing 6. And for about most of the game, South Carolina, I think until the last media timeout, had only 3, and then grabbed some offensive rebounds in that last little 4 or 5 minute segment of the basketball game. But a great job defensively, an elite job defensively on this team. You would like to see, Joyce Edwards get it going off the bench a little more. You'd like to see Tessa Johnson be able to, get her shot off a little more in a game like this. She only took 1 attempt, but this is the first time maybe this year, I think, that any bench unit that Carolina has played outscored them. Duke actually outscored them in bench points 24-9. How many times this year have we seen South Carolina's bench unit score more points than the other team as a whole? That's happened a lot this year. That was not the case today. So, yes, Brenda Freeze thought that after the Maryland game that her team has found that create a blueprint for other teams to beat South Carolina. But like what Joyce Edwards told me after the game is, you can have a blueprint, you still got to execute it. And I think Duke executed it well enough to be in the game. They didn't execute it well enough to win the game. And South Carolina executed on defense just well enough to be able to take care of business. I'm Elijah Campbell again. I'm going to be on air tomorrow with Jay Phillips from 3 to 6 on the post-game show, breaking down more from this game and taking a first look at the Final Four. Who is South Carolina going to play? They're going to play the winner of Texas and TCU. They play here in Birmingham tomorrow for the right to take on the Gamecocks. Do we see Vic Schaefer versus Don Staley Part 4 this year? It's real possible, but I do really like that TCU team. I think that's probably one of the more well-rounded basketball teams in the country still playing right now, and that'll be an incredible matchup because I think both those teams are completely different from when they met for the first time back all the way in December. So excited to see that. Looks like UCLA just punched their ticket to the Final Four, keeping LSU and Kim Mulkey out of it this year for the second straight season. So a lot to look forward to, a lot of discussion, starting with Bill Gunner, Preston Thorne, Jen Jensen in the early game, leading all the way up to myself and Jay Phillips in the afternoon. So looking forward to talking to you guys then. Another shout out to our sponsors, Atkins Law, Hilton Garden Inn, Columbia Craft and Peak Drift, and of course Lexington Discount Homes for allowing me to be here and bring you this coverage. We have a whole lot more to get into. 803-404-6100. Call in, text in, whatever way you want to do it to weigh in. We'll take a victory lap on Monday when we celebrate this South Carolina Gamecocks team going to a 5th straight Final Four. Never get tired of winning, my friends. Never get tired of it. We'll talk to you then.